So it's the evening after the passing of Pope Francis. And late night thoughts. Maybe that should be like a whole segment I do. After Dark with Camille. That definitely gives a different tone. Maybe that too, but have a modicum of decorum given the topic. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about the passing of Pope Francis. And so, for anyone who this is your opportunity to exit stage left, to bow out gracefully, some people may be wondering, well, why is it that you're a voodoo practitioner, you're a tarot card reader, you're a witch, but you're mentioning the leader of the Catholic Church? Well, not to turn this into a TED talk, as you know I will, but it's because I grew up as a Catholic. I grew up in Catholicism. My father was a Baptist minister, but my mother was a Catholic, and neither of my parents were fire and brimstone, and you know, not at all. Although they were very firmly steeped in their Christianity. And while I am no longer a practicing Catholic or Christian, love the man, the spirit force, really don't jive with, yeah, the man, the mission, yes. The followers now, no. So a lot of the behaviors of Christians do not align with what I what are the teachings of Christ and my own personal beliefs. But you can take the girl out of Catholicism. The girl can choose to leave Catholicism, but yeah, it's still in there. So Catholic in recovery, and there are many things about Catholicism, Christianity for that matter as a whole, but the true Christianity. But there are many things about the principles of that religion, specifically Catholicism, that still are very deeply rooted in me and give me still a sense of place, a sense of comfort, a sense of um, grounding. And so when I think about the Pope Francis having just passed, it of course drew me to the Hierophant card. And this is from the Wiser Tarot. So traditional Rider Waite Smith um, imagery with the Hierophant card from the Wiser Tarot. And we have literally the pontiff sat there between two columns, and on the papal throne holding the rod or the staff there with the crosses, and hands raised up in praise or to give a blessing, and the two cardinals, interesting, he's in red, they're not, um, or the two bishops perhaps, that lower clergy in comparison to the pontiff himself, and the two keys that are there. So traditional Rider Waite Smith symbolism. And it made me think about, well, what does this card mean? In addition to the fact that just the imagery is literally the Pope. And it's really interesting to me that Pope Francis died on the 21st of April, the ushering in of Taurus season, and that the Hierophant card is ruled by the sign Taurus. And this is him entering into Taurus season in a massive way. But when you think about just the bullet point words of what the traditional meanings of the Hierophant card, religion, teaching, education, systems, rigidity, structure, very stable, solid, consistent energy that comes with this card. And if we just think about what Taurus, it is a fixed sign, which is very much that stable, consistent, firmly rooted, dependable energy. And there's so much that comes up with tradition with this card. And as I've been watching a little bit to see, just some things, some news clips about the Pope having passed. And when I think about, again, tradition, there's so much tradition, pageantry, religious rigor, the card in and of itself. And it just makes me think about, what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be, and what I mean, think about the Pope as a leader. It is, the Vatican City is its own independent city state nation, of which he is the ruler, religious clergyman, leader, essentially president, mayor of the town, all the things, like everything that has to do with structured leadership, authoritarian. Let's back that up. Perhaps, but the authority. And just when you look at the imagery on a traditional Rider-Waite Smith deck that we just went over, it's funny. I knew somebody who used to say, if you want to know who's in charge of the Catholic Church, look how pointy the hat is. And the guy with the pointiest and the biggest hat is in charge. But the two columns on either side lend themselves to, again, staunch structure, very stable energy, and one thing being built upon another in order to preserve tradition, and consistency comes up with columns. Something very old, very ancient, and the glowing, in this particular version of the card, the glowing amber in the background lends itself to that enlightenment, theoretically. Also very much to power, also very much to the power that is gold, money, and there's a lot. I mean, the richest nation on the planet is for sure the Vatican. Um, the purple of royalty and the crown associated with that. Um, and the red, the power, perhaps the blood of the lamb, the sacrifices of Christ's sacrifice, perhaps could be seen in the imagery or the symbolism of the red robes that the Pope is wearing. But very much a nod to power, with the two subjects beneath, and the keys. The keys are answers, solutions, but keys hold secrets, and there's so much secrecy. And it's so fascinating to me when you think about, it's really interesting when you think about Catholicism, how much was drawn from the Druids, and Christian mysticism is its own whole thing, ceremonial magicians. There's nothing more ceremonial than a Catholic church service. And as I've been, again, watching and seeing, like, talk about staunched in tradition of how the Catholic Church is structured. And he was the 267th or 266th. Hold on, guys. I would call them notes, but it's a screenshot. So I guess it's notes. But I believe he was the 266th Pope. It's a lot of popes. And so now what will happen, in keeping with just helping us to understand the, again, tradition that is followed, and that how it oops, wrong card, sneak preview of the next card. Yeah, it relates how tradition relates to this particular card as we see this happening in real time in something. And that's something that I love to practice with myself or anyone I'm teaching tarot to. And I suggest for you guys, how can you see what's happening in real life, in real time, in the larger world, in pop culture, in society, as well as in your own personal life, and apply that to the cards, because that's really what helps to like weave and knit together the meaning and solidify it in not just in our heads, but in our gut and our spirit. So what will happen is the conclave, which I need to see that movie. I've been wanting to see it, but now I'm going to have to. And now I'm sure the movie is going to, if it wasn't making box office hits, it will now that the boat was passed on. God rest his soul. And anything with Jeremy Irons, like, hello, it's got to be fantastic. But the conclave will meet in about 2 or 3 weeks from now. And as per tradition, and all of the bishops from around the world will gather in Vatican City, and they will go to the basilica, to the Sistine Chapel, and they will be sequestered. And each one will cast their ballot, cast their vote for who will be the next pope. And so, black smoke, in keeping with the traditions, black smoke will continue to billow, because as they are literally written on scraps of paper, and then until a determination is made, those scraps are burned. And it's not, I'm pretty sure it's not by unanimous. I think it is because there are hundreds of bishops, of cardinals. Um, I think majority rule as to who will be the pope, the next pope to succeed um, Pope Francis. And so anyone is eligible who is younger than 80, because per tradition, they don't want anyone who's going to be there for too long of a period of time. So it's not like a cap of, oh, you can only be Pope for 4 years or 10 years, whatever. But they don't want someone to be there too long, so that they can have a turnover of a next Pope. But I find it interesting with when we look at just this card and the meaning and the literal position of being the Pope, it's so steeped in tradition, Catholic rigor. And when I personally read with this card, for me, it's so much about, and this is a card I honestly kind of struggle with, because it's very opposite to my energy in a lot of respects, more respects than not. It's about discipline. It's about ADD. I struggle. It's about, for me, it oftentimes comes up as people who are in charge who are so detached, so far removed. And even if you just look again at the imagery, he is above those that are beneath him. And so it comes up for me as a card with corporate. So anything where there's protocol, structured environment, there's a way that we do the thing and we do not deviate from the rules. And if we have to deviate, there's a rule for that. That's a subset of a rule. If all else fails, something else. But for me, this card often comes up with people who are so far detached and removed from the everyday regular schmegula experience of what people who are, so to say, boots on the ground, who are doing the thing. Like, this is a corporate supervisor a lot of times who's so detached from what the actual employees do, but they sit there in their ivory tower making rules. Or I remember when I was a flight attendant, my dad was just like, you all have got to be kidding me that you can actually have a supervisor who's never actually done your job and been a flight attendant, yet they can hold the position of supervisor, so they can hold the pen and the power that comes with that, making decisions and rules and regulations and guidebooks, and you have to answer to them, but they've never actually been on an aircraft and done the actual responsibilities of the job, just sitting there making rules in a vacuum. So that is so much of what comes up for me with this card. But it's also a card of principles, it's a card of protocol, it's a card of um, accountability. And those are things that I do highly respect when of the energies that come with this card. And as you related to Pope Francis, this tradition for centuries of the Catholic doctrine, the Catholic Church, and having to adhere to the rules, to the protocol. But it's interesting because Pope Francis, he pushed the boundaries of what the rules said and what the rules had to be. He was in many ways a very forward thinking person while still very steeped in his Catholic faith, in the teachings and the rules of the political machine that is the Catholic Church. But he bucked the system a little bit. He was able to say, while I have this position of authority and power, what changes can I implement? Where can I push the bar or push the envelope or make certain changes that still stick within the rigid structure that is fundamentally the teachings of the Catholic Church, the rules, while still recognizing that times are changing and there has to be some growth and some expansion because I mean, my God, people are leaving Christianity, like particularly the Catholic Church, in droves because so much is so outdated, old fashioned, too rigid, too resistant to change and growth. Those columns there, they are stable, they are solid, they're steadfast, and there's a wonderful aspects of that. But they're also marble columns. There's no give, there's no flexibility, there's no room for change. And so Pope Francis was known to have put women in positions of power in the Catholic Church that women had never been able to hold before in the entire history of the Catholic Church. He was much more open minded on LGBTQIA issues and sensitive to people's needs. Um, Definitely outspoken about calling out the fuckery that is. I'm choosing my words carefully because it's been called to my attention that certain words, I guess, we can't say. Um, Extreme atrocities and maltreatment and sexual abuse of minors. And he was very outspoken and in calling these priests out who commit these disgusting atrocities. And so when we think about this card, particularly with Pope Francis, and it's a 5, and where can change be made while still adhering to the traditions? What traditions are outdated? And what I was going to say is this is a 5, so it's the Master 5 as a major arcana. And I'm just going to pull out Lacrimosa Tarot uh, to show just different imagery. And there is someone with the rosary beads, systematic, definitely traditional, definitely a set way of doing things when using the beads, and so many different religions, um, from Nichiren Buddhism to other aspects of Buddhism, um, definitely Christianity, I mean Catholicism. You have your rosary beads, and it's something that's very physical. So when we think about again the earthiness of Taurus, of it as an earth sign energy. But 5s in the tarot are, talk about some bullshit. It's about, let's put a more positive spin on that. Facing adversity and obstacles and challenges and having the fortitude to overcome them. So if we look at this Master 5, let's look at the lower 5s, the minor arcana. So 5 of Wands, the struggle that may come with drama, internal or external, aggression, unwarranted arguing, and pettiness, dissension. Um, Five of Cups, grief, um, moving through grief, sorrow, guilt, shame. All of those things come with the Five of Cups, of longing for what has passed, but that can never be again, and moving through how do we repivot to what still could be, as opposed to what is already gone. Five of Swords, nastiness, spite, backbiting, narcissism, cruelty, manipulation, verbal abuse, or any other kind of abuse, but definitely verbal and psychological abuse as it's in the Swords family. And then with the Five of Pentacles, lack of stability, lack of resources, feeling like an outsider or being ostracized, um, lack of basic safety as human right. And with the Master Five of the Hierophant, how can we find stability? What institutions or organizations have protocols set in place in order to help others, perhaps? But what are our own individual traditions? What is our own individual self governance? Um, what rules and traditions are outdated and no longer suit us? And it's time to break away from tradition. And that could be religious rigor and indoctrination. That could be our own parental, societal. That could be our own that we've put upon ourselves. But when you're in that position of power, and it makes me wonder, like, secretly, what things was Pope Francis thinking? What things would he have loved to have seen more changes on? But again, I mean, can you imagine being the Pope? Like, how many people are gunning for your position? Like, so to be able to toe that line of still just traditional enough and just true enough to the original doctrine and the status quo, while still pushing that envelope again, and being willing to, with the steadfastness of a bull or an ox of Taurus, to remain grounded and firmly rooted in, again, traditional teachings, but also your own inner hierophant of your own personal moral compass. I wonder what things Pope Francis would have thought. There were things that I definitely disagreed with him about, um, women's rights issues, but he was also one who pushed past tradition. Like, one time, oh my God, he carried his own briefcase. Like, Jesus, that was like when President Obama wore a beige suit. Like, dear God, we have broken with tradition, a beige suit. The Pope wants to carry his own briefcase, which sounds insane to us as lay people, of course. But when you think of this person who is in one of the most powerful positions on the planet, he didn't see himself as above the people. He was a pope of the people. And one could argue he's still the pope, and so above and aristocracy. And you're right, you're right. But within that structure of proper etiquette and protocol, he broke with that. When he had come to the United States, and after giving an address at Congress, and there was supposed to be a fabulous plate, dinner that was to have been. And he said, no, I don't want to mix and mingle with other dignitaries. I want to go talk to the people that have lined the streets just to see me. And he was known to be very, very genuine and sincere. Forgive me, guys. I got myself into a lot of trouble by not staying hydrated today. But he was known to have been very sincere in wanting to matriculate with the people, and he spoke out about, in this position of power, it's my obligation to still look at those who are not, who are further down the socioeconomic and power scale, power strata, in order to, how can I go back and to still help them, to be of assistance. He spoke out so much against tyranny, against authoritarianism, was very, very vocal about that, against cruelty, those in power who can be maniacal and tyrannical and cruel. Brain tabs are opening. You can see the ding 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 tabs opening of rabbit holes. I'm like, nope, we're not going to go down that one. Nope, we're not going to go down that one either. But um, he was, in spite of being one of the most powerful people on the planet, was still a very relatable, down to earth person who took his position of power very seriously, by also remembering it was very non-conventional that he even got in as pope, because he definitely was not one of the top picks, because he was the first pope who was not European. He was of European descent, he was of Italian descent, but he was from South America. That completely broke with tradition. Reverse. And his wishes are to be buried in a wooden coffin. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he wants to be returned back to South America. And I think Venezuela is his country, but don't quote me on that. But he wants to be returned back, I think. But I know he wants to be buried in a very simple wooden coffin box, not all of the majesty and pageantry that comes with the Vatican and being buried in Vatican City, with the opulence there of popes before him. And I think that just speaks really highly to his character. So with the death card, it's all very memento mori, and massive change is going to happen. But the memento mori, I think, for us is, how do we want to live our lives? How do we want to be remembered? What morals and ethics and code of conduct do we want to dig our heels in and foster and stand by steadfastly? And which ones might we have, as a part of our lives, that we're realizing are outdated, outmolded, and it's time to grow and expand in our own personal journey, in our own spiritual journey, in our own understanding of ourselves and the world around us? What rules just don't make sense anymore? And this is a time of massive change, and so there's going to be smoke. You will see when they go into the conclave, when the conclave is gathered, and they write down, and they will burn the scraps of paper, and so black smoke will billow, in keeping with tradition, out of the place where they're sequestered, and until white smoke, new pope. So once the smoke goes white, that will be the indication that there is a new pope. And it's interesting because they say that the forerunners, the ones that you think are usually, who are like, oh, this is the one, the top five that are supposed to be most likely, it's usually not. And it's interesting also because, in keeping with tradition, the tradition is there's going to be something different about the new pope. Some way there will be very opposite energy. And that oftentimes means that after a very conservative pope like Pope Benedict, there will be a very, or more liberal leaning, or more lenient pope like Pope Francis. So what does that mean for the next Pope, will there be one who will be more conservative? Pope Francis had many bishops that he put into place around the world, but particularly outside of Europe. Well, that definitely breaks with tradition. And so there are many cardinals, South America, Asia, Africa, Southeast Asia. Did I say Southeast Asia? So that kind of widens the pool of perhaps to definitely to some extent, non-traditional um, popes or cardinals who are potential popes. So as he has been ushered in by the angels, as Archangel Gabriel blew her trumpet, as he is now in this awakening, it's interesting to me the awakening, the spiritual awakenings that he had while he was still in this mortal coil and ushering in the awareness of some things are just outdated and need to just die off, so that the resurrection of what the Catholic Church looks like moving forward, while still holding on to some of them or the majority of the traditional beliefs and values. But now his spirit has moved on to the next plane. So it's going to be interesting to see who the next pope is. So I'm going to live lit a candle for him tonight, and I will light a candle for his soul. And again, even though I'm not a practicing Catholic, I think at his core he was a good person who fundamentally was a good man, and had to learn how to navigate through a lot of rigor and how do you buck the system. And I think in a lot of ways he did, while he had these moments of enlightenment of his core values in keeping with the real traditions, the teachings of Christ, as opposed to the man made construct of religion. Until the next video, stay well, stay healthy, stay safe. Prayers to St. Francis's soul, and I will see you in the next video.